Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to the People Strategy Forum podcast. And we're a show that guides leaders through how to elevate the workforce overall. We believe that people are at the heart of every successful organization, and team members' well-being, their rewards, career development, they're all essential to a happy and healthy and highly productive workplace. This show is a practical and effective guide for leaders on how to develop these strategies and to better elevate the overall workforce is the intent. We want to make sure that we're sharing these ideas with one another so that we can create these workplaces that are just wonderful for people to be in. So today we have a couple hosts here I want to introduce. We have Howard Nisewitz. He's a senior compensation advisor and a strategic HR consultant who is on a mission to revolutionize the world of compensation. So Howard has over 30 years of experience and is transformed compensation programs for leading financial services and technology companies, both globally and regionally. And so anybody that knows Howard knows that he personally loves technology and helps companies navigate from those spreadsheets to those sophisticated systems. And so he brings a wealth of knowledge there. So thank you very much, Howard, for guiding us in that area. And also we have Shar Miller as a human resource consultant and business owner. She's what I call a serial entrepreneur. She's a chief human resource officer at Rocky Mountain Health Advocates. And I know, Shar, that she has established a couple of businesses. One is Mountain and Sea Career Strategies and also Mountain and Sea Health Advocacies. And so she helps a lot of people through that. She also goes by the mantra of HR with a heart, which I think is very important, that tells you where she's coming from. She has 25 years of experience in talent management and a whole bunch of host of other things. So a wealth of experience here to have her on the show. Now, also, I'm just introducing myself really quick. My name's Sam Reeve. I'm the founder of Comp Team. I help technology and nonprofits from a variety of different industries really build that foundational infrastructure that's going to help them grow, whether it's pay ranges or short-term incentive plans, different things like that to really engage people. And the reason why we are doing this People Strategy Forum here is that we know that there's other things that are important beyond pay. Pay needs to be right, but all these programs surrounding it, whether, talent management and development and succession planning, all these make sense, they're critical to ensure that for a happy and healthy workplace. Without these pieces, compensation is not enough to really be effective and overall. So I want to tell you a little bit about our guest today. I want everybody to get ready to unbox a new perspective on organizational success. So today we have a remarkable guest joining us from, she's a trailblazer in the human workplace. And she was really a driver of humanity in the way she's thinking about talent and bringing it into the workplace. Please welcome Danielle Boris. She's a visionary founder and CEO of Sandbox and host of the captivating Unboxing Humans podcast. We're going to talk a little bit about that and this great book as well. She's the author of The Energy of Weirdos. So great title, Danielle. With a background in technology and human effectiveness, she's worked with companies like BuzzFeed and Tiffany Co. And so she's just a wealth of knowledge. So thank you, Danielle, for joining us today on the People Strategy Forum podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So just to start out, I'd love to just dive into this a little bit more about what really inspired you to develop the software, to write the book, to go through this. So tell us a little bit about let's back up, 5 years or so and just talk about your path and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to back up 7 years actually to the first week of work. And I was walking to a meeting with my then 27-year-old colleague, and she saw this excitement on my face, oh my gosh, my first work meeting. I can't wait. This is going to be great. And she turned to me and said, I remember when I used to be excited. It'll pass. And in that moment, I just had this feeling of, I never want the excitement to pass. I never want to feel jaded about work. I never want to come in and say, oh, another day at the office. And unknowingly from there, it sparked a whole chain of events. So luckily for me, I was at a company that really believed in employee engagement. So I started to do every employee engagement activity, every lunch and learn, every meetup. I joined the kickball team, you name it, I was there. But I found it really wasn't enough to keep me motivated at work, in my day-to-day work, in my job. And as I grew at the company, the struggle was still there. I had this intrinsic motivation that I started out with. So this, overwhelming sense of excitement and enthusiasm and desire to learn. But it was really hard to keep that as the learning curve sort of leveled off. I went to my next company and the same thing happened. I had amazing leaders. I had great compensation, all the things that we were just talking about, but something was missing. And I went to do my M.B.A. and I learned about leadership and what really makes employees, managers, and organizations successful. And from there, I realized that the big gap is that I was being pushed up a ladder, and that was a set ladder. But there was all these other things that made me uniquely me. And the same thing with my colleagues who had the exact same job title as me, right? We weren't clones of each other. And so we were able to bring different things to the table, but we had no way of actually doing that at the company. It was basically like, go up and be promoted. And if something over here is interesting, that's nice, but like your lane is here. And there wasn't that opportunity for really growing along our unique interests and collaborating across the organization.
Yeah. So I mean, but then you developed this software. How'd that come about?
Yeah, so from that insight, I started developing Sandbox, really talking to hundreds of employees, managers, CEOs, HR professionals to understand all the different sides of the problem. And it seemed that the real disconnect was leaders wanted to foster their talent in the way I was just describing, and employees wanted their leaders to foster their talent, but the leaders didn't know all of these things about the employees, and the employees had no way to voice what they wanted. And so we put that together with Sandbox. We created a platform where we recommend the right team members for every opportunity in a company, whether that's a project, an engagement initiative, or even a job. We can become an internal talent marketplace. At the same time, employees wanted a way to raise their hand for work that was interesting, to help colleagues out, to dive in, but they had nowhere to see all of the open opportunities at the company. So we made that with the click of a button, employees can raise their hand quite literally for an opportunity and signal to the manager that they're interested in working with them on this project or job. And what's really cool about this is all of these insights happen in real time. So we know what everyone wants, we know what everyone is doing, and we can bring that together into a talent intelligence dashboard where we show how essentially engaged every employee is between the work that they're doing and the work that they want to do. And that allows leaders to actually re-engage their employees who are not aligning with what they want or not growing along their unique talents, skill sets, and interests. Through all of this is when I started writing the book, because I was speaking with all of these leaders who really cared about their talent. And I was speaking with amazing employees who had these really interesting stories. All of the leaders I spoke with took a winding route, right? No one went straight up the ladder. And their stories were so fascinating. And I had all of this research in my mind from my MBA and from my undergrad. And so I said, there's really a connection between the scientific literature on how to best lead teams, people's amazing stories of leadership. And I was lucky enough to speak with Barbara Corcoran, really world-class leaders on how they lead. And she would tell me, you have to believe in your talent 110%. Well, what that is that she's describing is the Pygmalion effect. And that's a known psychological principle that people will rise to the expectation you set for them. So I wanted to put these together and create a book that really allowed everyone to thrive. And so the premise of the book is that we're all unique or weird in our own ways. And when we see people for who they are rather than what they are, we can better connect with each other, better lead our teams, and have more successful organizations. And then lastly, that led to the podcast as well, because I didn't want to stop doing these interviews. I was so inspired, and I wanted people to hear the incredible stories from the incredible, inspiring leaders themselves. So I started the podcast Unboxing Humans so that every week I can deliver these inspiring stories to our listeners.
Yeah, I got to say, I agree with you there as far as podcasts are a great way to just learn and have discussions with people. I mean, it's been a very powerful experience for me because it just keeps you going week after week and, connecting with people, talking to people, learning new ideas. I mean, it just brings so much innovation and understanding of what everybody's doing in the industry and how if you bring on guests that are moving in a common direction, I mean, it's just so powerful as far as the knowledge that we can share with one another.
I absolutely agree. And I even think for myself, how often I turn to podcasts and listen to people who I would have never had the opportunity to hear speak, whether that's because they live across the world or across the country, or just because I never got to an event that they're at where they're speaking and I can hear their story. And I have these moments of, wow, wait, that sounds just like me. Oh, that's what I was trying to describe. That's why I feel this way. And that connection, right? That's creating a connection between me and this person who doesn't know me, but I know them and they've made an impact. So knowing that I can make that same impact on others through the podcast by interviewing really amazing people is just means the world to me.
So what are some of the stories that you've learned through the podcast and that you can share with us?
Yes, well, the main theme that always comes up is that there is no right or wrong path. And often people found themselves in the position they were in by accident, right? It said this opportunity presented itself, and also the level of perseverance that comes up. So one of my favorite stories, and because it's so inspiring, not because it's was a good experience, but Martinez Evans was on my podcast, and he has the Instagram account 300 pounds and running. And his story is that he went to the doctor because he was experiencing some hip pain, and the doctor told him that he needed to lose weight or die, and started really belittling him. And he said, I could run a marathon if I wanted to. And instead of saying, yes, go run a marathon, you can do it, the doctor told him that if you run a marathon, you'll die. And that was the stupidest thing he'd heard in all of his years of practice. And so an incredibly belittling conversation that an experience for Martinez, which he then took as inspiration. And he then went that day, he left the doctor's office, bought a pair of running shoes and went to the gym and started running. Well, what happened? He fell flat on his face, truly off the treadmill. But he got up the next day and he went back. And that perseverance has inspired, right? He's been inspired to keep going, but he's also inspired a whole thousands, tens of thousands of people to run no matter what you look like. And he's created a clothing line for people who he says, don't look like typical runners. And he's created a more size inclusive running industry because he accidentally fell into this. And so that story was very inspiring. Jennifer Dulski as well, who is a serial entrepreneur and has been at Yahoo as well as change.org. She also has a different story where from childhood, she knew that she wanted to give back, and she knew that impact was so important to her. And her first job out of school, she was running an arm of a nonprofit. She started a local branch at 22. And her story definitely winds around, but always came back to impact for her. So this is someone who from childhood had this sense of, I'm going to give back. That needs to be part of my career. But then found herself in tech, and how do you link tech and impact? And then obviously has come back full circle. So it really inspiring stories.
Yeah, I love stories. They can be so powerful. One of the story that comes to mind recently with one of our clients there that's related to our topic today, which is really understanding those intrinsic motivators, what really makes a person tick and putting them in the right place, in the right job that they love. Um, so this story is about a purpose-driven company. They're out of Florida, and they had they had a community, elderly community, and uh, they ran a pretty tight ship. As far as they had a very important culture in place. They wanted to make sure they're very careful with who they brought on, and that they met the cultural needs of the organization. They want to make sure that their people were well taken care of. And up came this opportunity for a yoga instructor, and they and they had the hardest time trying to find a yoga instructor with the right value set to help their people. And so they were, after looking for a while, they got frustrated, and we were talking to them, and it's like, well, have you looked internally if there's anybody, because that people internally have they already have the values, they have the mindset, and so forth. And so they started doing this, and lo and behold, they found that one of their accounts payable people, had a passion for yoga,
Yeah.
and they didn't know, they had no idea, but until they asked, and so now their accounts payable person also has a side job of doing yoga classes for their home. And so it's been a great opportunity for them. They know that they're bringing on somebody that has the aligned values already, and they're creating more opportunity for their internal people. So stories like that, I think they're huge.
That's exactly the premise of my work, right? It's that all that time and effort that they spent looking, they could have been engaging this worker and strengthening their community through that. That's absolutely fantastic. And who would have ever thought that someone in accounts payable by the title is also a yoga enthusiast? But why can't they be a yoga enthusiast
Right.
just because they're in accounting? That is a fantastic story. I love that. The epitome of people first work.
But that's the thing is that I often have clients that come to me and they're saying, well, we only have so many jobs in the organization, that we just don't have that upward mobility because we only need an accountant. We don't need a super duper senior, accountant or a controller. We just need an accountant. And so there's that ceiling for that particular role. And so they don't think about growing horizontally, providing those other opportunities for people to keep them engaged so they can grow their career, so they can contribute to the organization in different ways. So I think that's a great tool that you came out. And so tell us a little bit about how this tool came to be. I mean, what gave you the idea initially?
Yeah, it was really sparked out of my own experience working. But I'm a researcher at heart, and as any good researcher does, they put the idea aside and say, okay, let's go talk to the people. And so that's what I did. I say, luckily for me, it was May 2020 when I was first exploring the idea. So I had a lot of people who were excited to talk. If we remember, in May 2020, we were all at home, and it was the time of, let's jump on a Zoom, let's jump on a phone call, please, let's chat. So I would say, do you have 15 minutes? And they're like, 15? I have 2 hours. Let's do it. Like, please spend the afternoon talking to me about this. And I got some great insights from people about their experience because, staying true to what we ended up building, my experience is not the same as everyone's, but there were common threads. And I asked a very important question, which was, tell me about the day you realized a change needed to be made at work. And everyone jumped to the day that they decided to quit. And I said, no, before that, right? Because when we think about employee turnover, the day that we actually say, I quit, comes many, many months, sometimes many years after the day that we know something needs to change. And that's where I started to hear the same thread come up. So people would say to me, well, I realized it was harder to get out of bed. I really was like, dragging myself out of bed. Okay, I was getting stronger coffees every morning. I was getting there later. I was looking to leave as soon as I could. And then I said, so what did you do? And that's where people started to stumble. They said, I went on to the, employee database and I looked for people with interesting job titles and I just cold messaged. And, can we have a coffee chat? I want to know what you're doing. Or, they asked their colleague, well, what are you working on? Can I try to work on that with you? Basically, they were trying to figure out how they could stay excited about their work. Nearly everyone I talked to ended up not being a career switcher. And I think that's important because career switching is such a hot topic right now. But no one said to me, or very few people said, oh, I was in the totally wrong line of work. I was an accountant and I needed to be a product manager in tech. That rarely happened. Mostly people said, I was in the right job. I was in the right role. I was at the right company, but I wasn't inspired anymore. Why? Because they weren't learning anymore. So that's where that disconnect was coming up. What companies saw as this employee is now effective and productive, the employee feels as I am no longer learning. When we're no longer learning, we're no longer staying inspired, right? That curiosity we go into autopilot, and that's when we start to disengage. So we need a system that allows people to continuously learn, to continuously develop, to engage in whatever their interests are within their day-to-day, but also in the extracurriculars and those engagement activities. And then when we're hiring, like your story said, Sam, right? Suddenly that person is there because we have these profiles set up. So Sandbox at the end of the day, right? We didn't need a better note-taking system for managers in their one-on-ones. We needed a way for people to speak up without having to raise their voice. So that, because I remember at the time people were working from home. So we needed a way for someone to say, this is what I'm interested in. And for leaders to say, oh, I didn't know I had this talent on my team within my organization. And a way for people to lean in when they were feeling that disengagement. So I'm at home, oh, I'm not really inspired. Often people had some free time. Let me go on the Sandbox dashboard and look at what's going on. Let me look at what I can lean into right now. And then they engage themselves in the work. So it was really that two-sided platform that was needed.
So Danielle, what do leaders and managers then need to do with the information that's gathered in Sandbox? How do they turn that into an action plan?
Yeah, so Sandbox is inherently actionable. And that was really important to us, is that there's all these surveys out there already, right? That are saying, well, what are your goals? What do you want to do here? And that isn't very actionable. It requires someone to look through it. I was at an HR conference and one of the fantastic speakers said, oh, HR is strapped enough. We don't have a data analyst on the team to sift through the surveys. So we need a platform that was inherently actionable. So how it works is every employee fills out their Sandbox profile. Those are their work interests and their skill level for each interest. These can be updated and changed at any time. So someone can listen to a podcast and say, oh, right, that's really interesting. And they can go and add that into their Sandbox profile right then and there. And what we do with that information is we surface it when an opportunity arises in the company. And how we surface it is, let's say I'm the leader. So I put in an opportunity. I'm going to use Sam's example. We're hiring for a yoga instructor. Does anyone, and then I tag it, I need someone who maybe is yoga certified or yoga enthusiast and wants to become certified. I need someone who's going to dedicate, an hour a week, whatever it is. And then we surface right there in the platform. These are the team members that match your opportunity. And then right in the platform, the leader can actually click on their face and add them to the opportunity, and they get a notification, you've been added. And they take that into the project management tool that they use, if they use one. So whether that's Monday or Jira, whatever it is, we also we connect to those platforms, so it will automatically go into those platforms as well, and they start the work right then and there.
Well, I absolutely love this because as an HR lady that did orientation every week, I mean, one of my healthcare organizations, literally, I had 100 people in my orientations, believe it or not. But we'd have them fill out like this form, getting to know you form. And so I remember, you know, people would write down, you know, what's your hobbies? Oh, I like to hike. I like to decorate. I like crafts. But then all we did in HR was just gather those forms and then stuff them in their employee file or wherever they got stuff. I look back at that time thinking, wow, what a waste. I mean, I'm talking a long time ago, like probably 20 years ago, but what a waste. I'm aging myself. But what a waste that we did not like share the getting to know you information with the leader, because then the leader would just inherit the employee and immediately put him into a training system or, you know, some type of preceptor. I predominantly healthcare, you know, type of system. We really, as HR, kind of failed, I feel, because as an HR executive or HR representative, I had my span of control. I had, you know, at one time I had 3,000 employees, believe it or not, in my book of business. And then I had usually 1,000 employees. There's no way I could sit down with every leader and say, well, I got to know, you know, Sam, and I got to know that he loves rock climbing and hiking and traveling. And, you know, I never sat down with the leader and really share what I learned. And we also never in the olden days really sat down with the leader and really talked about what HR learned and what they should be talking about with their employees other than the work performance of the job. And half the time they never saw their job description anyway. So this is awesome. That I love what you're talking about because it sounds like it's very user friendly. It's very a hands-on, I call it just in time, where a leader, I assume, could be right at their fingertips. They've got that information right there and be able to get to know their employee and open up that dialogue. So my question for you is, how do you make it just in time for the leader so that that data or information is easily accessible? Is it on an app or a website? How does that work for that leader to know all those minute details to get to know their employees?
Yeah, so just in time, we like to say at Sandbox, we are real time. So there's literally no lag at all. And we are web-based, and we're intentionally web-based so you can access it on any device that accesses the internet. So you could be on your phone, you could be at your work computer, wherever you are. And what is really cool is that exactly what you're saying, that real-time information, because it allows the leader to in real time see, I have this project, immediately here are the right people, and immediately here's my team and I've added them, right? That happens in, I mean, I'll say seconds, but minutes, truly. And from the HR perspective, you have that talent intelligence dashboard, which is also updating in real time. So anytime someone gets added to a project, that dashboard immediately updates. Anytime someone changes their interest, that dashboard immediately updates. So as an HR professional, you can go in and see by the manager, by department, however you want to see it, this is how the health of this team. And not only the health of this team, but then here's exactly what everyone on this team is interested in. And here's exactly what this manager needs to do to engage that team member. So it's retaining the employee before they even have the chance to disengage. It is just consistently developing, and it's all at your fingertips, web-based.
That's perfect. I mean, back in the old days, we didn't even have beepers. Okay. But that sounds awesome. I also think that from a cost savings perspective, the financial guys here on our forum today would appreciate this. From a cost saving perspective, my experience working with a really large 150,000 employee organization, is that we had a lot of shadow positions.
Mhm.
So for example, I'll just give you an easy one, project management. Every single department had their own project manager, right?
Yep.
And that project manager never really talked to the other project managers. So it was like they're all in different places doing different methodologies, not connecting with each other on what their projects were and how they helped the other projects. So I was very vocal in that corporate career of, we need to get all these project managers together and blend what everybody's working on. So to me, this technology seems like it also helps all those shadow positions too, which is really a cost saving initiative. Would you not agree, Danielle?
Yes, absolutely. That is, I hear this story over and over again from people, right? Whether it's project managers or engineers. There are people who's like, the job title is the same, but they're on different teams. They don't talk to each other. And we have no idea if they are doing the right work for that they want to be doing, right? Because what happens so often in these types of positions is, let's say you're a project manager and you're a company A, you can go to company B and do the exact same work. So I say it's even more important in those positions because you need to really know what drives that employee, what really fuels them. Because if they can go across the street and do the same work, then they're going to stay with you for a reason. And it's going to be more than the competitive salary, which you should be paying them and which the across the street is going to pay them, right? So what is it about that? And when we put people together, that's also where innovation comes from, right? Oh, I didn't know you were doing something this way. Teach that to me. Oh, what a better solution. And you might end up, which we see often, you have a project manager who is on one team because that's the role that was open. And 2 years earlier, you hired a project manager on a different team because that was the role that was open. But actually, they want to be flipped, right? The one person wants to be on their team and this person wants to be on that team. But we have no idea, because how would we have any idea without Sandbox and without people inputting this information? So we absolutely help with that. And that inspires, right, innovation, growth. And it also really helps from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint as well. And I can get into that. That's embedded into everything we do. The other side of the cost savings that I like to talk about is within Sandbox, and that dashboard that I was talking about, the talent intelligence dashboard, you actually can also see what skill gaps are missing within the company. So when you're hiring, you can be sure that you're hiring someone who's actually filling the right skill gaps, as opposed to hiring someone who fits the right job title, but maybe not the right skills that are missing on the team that you need to be filling in on the team, because we know how many different skills go into making someone successful in the organization.
I love that, especially, I mean, we need these systems that are more real time and flexible. I mean, there's systems out there that do talent pools. I mean, those have been around for a while, but the thing is that when you hire a person, that information is put in there and then it's forgotten about, right? and then there's few times where it's kept alive, where here it sounds like the user or the employees can actually, raise their hand and say, hey, I just took this training, or I'm interested in this now. And so they keep it alive and real, right?
Yes, that's exactly it. And employees are so excited to do that. They're screaming for it. They said, I want to be excited about my work. No one wants to go into a job every day for 8 hours a day that they're not excited about. And so what we do is, yes, we keep it alive. They say, I just went to this event, this networking event that was really interesting. I did a training through our education portal, right? We have all of these learnings that are available through companies. And then they have nowhere to put that they did that, right? Or nowhere to apply that skill set. So Sandbox allows, one, for people to update their profile, but also for the education lead on the HR teams, right? To say, oh, these are the people who would be interested in this educational opportunity, because right now they have no way. They're saying, oh, this could be interesting. Does anyone want to do it? instead of looking at what people want to do and being able to design programs around their employees, which they all want to do for sure. Yeah.
It's funny. I just recalled a story about 6 months ago. I was doing some research when quiet quitting was all the top hot topic of HR at that time. And so I was talking to a lot of 20 somethings and asking them what their perspective on that was. And a lot of the feedback I got was like, it's not that we're intentionally quiet quitting. We're just getting bored. We're going in, we're getting bored of doing the same thing every day. And there's it just lose the passion for a while. And so that was interesting in creating this outlet. I mean, like what your tool does is it creates this awareness to managers saying, hey, these people are thinking about X, Y, and Z that they're interested in. And it's a way to ensure that we're creating opportunity and engagement for everyone.
I'm glad you brought that up. That's exactly what it is. It's disengagement is ultimately just boredom. And we talk a lot about burnout, which is incredibly important to talk about. But the other side of that is boredom. And because burnout is such a hot topic, we don't realize that a large portion of our organizations are truly bored. And we can be distributing that work. In the talent intelligence dashboard, there's a graph that we show, which is actually inspired from research that dates back to the 1970s. And in this research, this researcher surveyed employees across thousands, across different organizations, different types of work. And he had them say how much they were leaning in, like to their work, how much autonomy they had over their work, and how much they were learning and how much they weren't learning, all these different factors. And basically he found that when people are have a sense of autonomy over their work, and that's not just deciding what work to do when, but it's also saying, this is what I want to do to grow. I'm able to say, I want to lean into this type of project to develop, and they were learning and thriving. They were considered what we call today engaged employees. But on the other side, when people were doing sort of task-based work of, okay, I do this, I always do this every single day, and they didn't have the autonomy over it, and they said that they weren't really learning. They were in what we call like super productivity mode. They were doing a lot of work. It wasn't interesting. They were really bored. And there was a mixture of all of these things, and I show this in the graph, that actually predict burnout and boredom. So a different study done actually on healthcare professionals showed that when work aligns with our interests, just 20% of the time, we can combat burnout. So think about that for a minute. They actually went into hospitals and they worked with nurses, with the janitorial staff, you name it. And they did this study that actually showed that when people aligned to their work and their interests, so they were still a janitor at the hospital, but they were doing the janitorial work that they found more interesting. They just 20% of the time, and they combated burnout in these employees. It is so powerful. And on the flip side, when people are bored, they disengage, and it's really hard to reignite that spark if we let it go too long. So we show that in Sandbox.
Right. Well, one of the things that I like where you're heading with all of this is that as a compensation professional, we've been talking about skill-based pay and kind of breaking down jobs into its finer components forever, because that's where real value is held. I mean, where some tasks are worth more than others in organizations, but the problem is that there's just not enough. It's too hard to track all these things. There's not a system in place to track these different projects and skill sets that people have. And so I'm glad what you're developing and moving in that direction. Now, the one thing that I think that is critical in all of this, I mean, we're seeing this naturally happen in the marketplace. I mean, we've had jobs for hundreds of years, right? We've had careers. You're a farmer. and now we've got a job that's more specialized, and then we're moving into projects and tasks that are further more specialized. And I think this is super important, especially now with the pace that the world is changing. We need to keep ramped up on new technologies that are coming out, have a place to put our micro learning so we can keep our micro learning portfolio up to speed and see what is available out there. But one of the things that I think that is also revisiting the project management piece that we were talking about.
Mhm.
I think part of the flaws that we've had in the past, as Shar pointed out, is that when a project manager works with a certain group of people, those are the group of people that they are used to. That's their SEAL Team 6, right? That they are always calling upon. But we all know, as we network with other parts of the organization, with other companies and so forth, we become stronger and more resilient. We have more opportunities available to us. I mean, if we're laid off from one place, we can rely on our network to find us work elsewhere. And I think that this tool allows us to see the greater network that's available in organizations and take advantage of it and become more impactful to the organizations. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. It comes down to seeing people for who they are, not just what they are, right? This project manager knows so much about their team from years of working together. They start to know more of the who rather than this person is an engineer. Okay, put a front-end engineer, whatever it is, let's say it's a tech company, right? So I put them on this type of work over and over and over, versus this person is a front-end engineer who loves trying new food places on the weekend, who also does yoga, who has a particular interest in functional design, who actually loves working with the entertainment clients and everything that makes them a human rather than a job title. And that's where that connection becomes so powerful, because to your point, let's say someone does get laid off and they rely on their network. Those are the strongest connections, where someone says, oh, I have the perfect person you should talk to. They are also a foodie who loves yoga, who loves working with entertainment clients, right? They have these other facets, not this person also has your job title, therefore you must really click. And that's where Sandbox, right, really can aid these organizations, because we foster that deeper level of connection. We foster that deeper level of work that really allows the employees to thrive, but the managers to thrive as well, because managers thrive when their teams are really bursting with energy. We've all been on those teams, right? It's like, wow, I know something awesome is going to come out of this group of people. Like, you feel it. Managers describe it to me like, I just feel the success. And it's that feeling that we can create, that success we can create every time when we put the right people on the right team, which ultimately makes the companies more successful as well.
It's really great. Oh, sorry, Shar.
No, go ahead, Howard.
What's really great though is like sometimes managers feel like they don't want to pry, they don't want to go too far, and sometimes you have employees that are a little shy and they're not that open, and this gives them a way on both sides to really express and show the skill sets and their interests without feeling like, oh, it's a personal invasion. It's like, I've submitted this, these are my interests. The manager will say, I never knew this about Joe or Sally or Sue or whatever. So it's really phenomenal. And that's the real power and beauty of it.
I'm so glad you said that, Howard, because actually someone on my original team through my MBA, my engineer, Alex, he had this exact problem. He is quieter and he's not American, and his culture, he was raised, you don't speak up to your manager, to your superior. You don't say, this is what I want, right? That's a very American thing to do. And so he was at a company for 3 years as an engineer, and he was getting world-class evaluations. He kept getting raises, promotions. They loved him, but he wasn't doing the work he enjoyed. And no one knew that, because he was never going to speak up. That's never what he was going to do. It doesn't matter how many trainings, it doesn't matter how many times someone said, please tell me. That wasn't his culture. And so he joined my team because he wanted to be part of the solution that allowed him to input his interests and be seen without having to raise his voice. And he could raise his hand in a platform without having to raise his voice. And so the diversity, equity, and inclusion is really embedded into every part of the platform. And so whether you're Alex, who grew up in another country, or whether you're just inherently more shy, whether you are overlooked as a woman, as we know so many women are, it levels the playing field. And we say, these are the right people, not the loudest person, not the person who happens to be sitting next to you, but the right people. And then on the dashboard side, here's who you're overlooking. Here's who's not getting those opportunities. So exactly to your point, everyone, no matter who you are, really has the opportunity to thrive. And that's why Alex joined me in this project. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I absolutely love what you're doing. You did make a comment a few minutes ago that I just really intrigued me. I think there is a real issue around ageism going on, and I think it's still alive and well. Now that I am in my 50s, my early 50s still, I do hear more and more of the people that are getting laid off. And there's a lot laying off still, even in this time. It's interesting, you see companies, oh, there's such a labor shortage, or I can't find anybody. Well, then why did you just lay off, 13 people? I mean, did you talk to those 13 people that you just laid off to find out if they had any capacity or talent or competency or training or development that we could have located that individual? And it saddens me because I hear so many people are getting laid off all the time, even today. I don't even know what the statistics are. If Sumit was on here, he would tell me. But it's interesting to me. I still hear about that. And I think that this would be very interesting, your platform to utilize before we just, lop off our talent who have been here for 15 years or even 30 years. I mean, let's really take a look at what we could repurpose that talent for, because things like technology have changed. Maybe that person isn't as up to speed in that new technology, but we certainly could have taken the time to help develop that person to learn that new technology instead of just, laying them off. So I just thought that was kind of interesting.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because in this climate, yes, companies are laying off people left and right. I mean, we saw the tech bubble burst. And when I speak with companies, I sometimes am met with, well, actually come back to us in like 3 weeks because no one can really know yet, but like we're really reevaluating our talent. And so after basically we restructure the organization, then we want Sandbox. And I said to them, you need me before you do that, because you're going to end up laying off people who might have been the right fit for this new strategy, and keeping the people who are the wrong fit because you are not evaluating them on the correct basis. And then you're really in trouble, right? We hear all these stories of people who get the companies lay off talent, and then suddenly, the second wave quits and says, well, why did they all quit? And it's really because they're not aligned with this new vision. And because you laid off the wrong people, so now everyone is sort of misaligned. And this also happens, not even with layoffs, but just with reorganizations in the company, right? Companies move around talent. I have a story. A friend of mine was doing work that she loved, and then she walked into work the next day and they said, okay, we're restructuring the whole organization. And her leader, who had been there for 2 months, she had been at the company for 3 years, and you are going to be on this team, and you're going to be in charge of designing our new newsletter. She was a UX designer, our newsletter portfolios. And she's like, I don't want to do that. Like, suddenly you've changed my whole job. And then the job she was doing was actually empty. She said, well, who's doing that job? I said, oh, we don't know yet. Like, we're going to backfill it. She's like, but I want to do that job. Right. And so here they were doing this whole reorg without actually taking into account what really drives people. So what was her takeaway? I have to quit. And suddenly the next day, right, there was a team of 12, 7 of them quit. And then because of something that was so solvable, just knowing what your employees want to be working on and structuring it accordingly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So important, Danielle. So, thank you so much for bringing up this important topic. And that last story that you mentioned, I just want to bring this up because the workforce experience is so critical. And that's a book that Sumit and I just recently wrote, and we launched this just recently. So timely. Thank you for bringing that up as a good segue to introduce this. But anyway, it's available on Amazon if anybody wants to check that out. It's very powerful on these different elements. Elements that include like Daniela's tool as far as the importance of finding opportunity within your own people and so forth. Also, I want to take, as we're moving towards the top of the hour here, I want to take a moment to recognize our speaker for next week. We're going to have Beth Ridley. She's going to come in and talk to us all about 3 easy ways to apply diversity, equity, and inclusion mindset at work. And so this is such an important topic. We've, DEI is a piece that's been shown. It's to further increase innovation and performance in organizations. And I'm a true believer that we need to stay on this and understand how to further embrace diversity across our organizations to have a more cohesive mindset and understand each other and how each other thinks. All right, so at this point, Danielle, I'd love to just, a lot of our listeners out there are just thinking, how can I learn more about this software? How can I get a demo? How do I tune into Danielle's podcast, read her book? How do people get a hold of you and learn all these things?
The best way is to go to danielleboris.com, and that's just my name.com. And I link to everything from there. But if you're interested in Sandbox, that's sandboxtogether.com, and we'll set up a demo. You can actually, the calendar is live, so you can actually book a demo right there immediately that works well for you, eliminate all the back and forth of it. And Unboxing Humans, you can find wherever you get your podcasts. We release episodes every Tuesday, so definitely check us out. We have amazing, amazing speakers in this season too. And The Energy of Weirdos, my book, is available on Amazon, on bookshop.org, Barnes & Noble, and through my website, as well as some local bookstores as well.
Very cool. Yeah, I think that all these ways of communicating is just another thing that we were talking about diversity just a minute ago. These different elements of communicating is so important, whether it's a podcast or a book or audio, or even in the platform to communicate what we want. As you mentioned, your colleague is reluctant to use certain channels to communicate, and so this is so important, having your tool available. So I think that's one huge message that leaders need to understand, is that when we're doing communication through programs, it's not just one and done. We have to look at multiple ways of reaching out to our people to keep them engaged. And having those diverse communication methods are the best way to get our message out and to be heard and to hear others.
Yes, and you can also follow me on social media by that note. You can follow me on LinkedIn or on Instagram if you prefer Instagram at Danielle Boris. And I post there all about leadership and really the psychology behind all of this as well. And so many great insights from my podcast interviews from Unboxing Humans. So definitely follow me there as well and connect.
Thank you, Danielle. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Dave.
love your stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone, and see you next week on the People Strategy Forum.
Bye.
Bye.